Right now, at this very moment, the most powerful man in Iran is a man almost nobody in the West can name. A man who has not given a single speech, who has not appeared on a single stage, who has not shown his face to a single camera since the day he inherited the most dangerous job on the planet. His name is Mujtaba Khamenei. He is the new supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And he is invisible. And every Western analyst is looking at that silence and telling you the same thing. They're saying Iran is paralyzed. They're saying the regime is leaderless. They're saying the new leader is weak, hiding, afraid to show himself while American bombs fall and his father lies buried in Mashhad. And I'm here to tell you that is exactly backwards. That silence is not weakness. That silence is a message. And if you understand what that message actually says, you will understand more about where this war is going than every headline you have read this week combined. I'm Professor Jiang, and today we are going to decode the silence of a man the world cannot see. I've spent months mapping what's coming between now and 2030. The wars, the economic shocks, the power shifts, and I put all of it into an ebook called The Next Global Shift. If you want it, the link is in the caption and the comment section. Now let's get into it. Let me start with what happened, because the timing here is everything. Ali Khamenei is dead. He was buried at the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad, one of the holiest sites in all of Shia Islam. That is not a small detail. You do not bury an ordinary man there. You bury a man you intend to turn into a saint. And within days, the machinery of the Islamic Republic did what it was built to do. It named a successor. Mojtaba Khamenei, the second son, the man who spent decades in the shadows building networks inside the Revolutionary Guard, inside the clerical establishment, inside the intelligence services. And then, the moment he took power, he vanished. No inauguration broadcast. No address to the nation. No triumphant appearance before the crowds. Nothing. Total silence from the top of the pyramid while the country is at war. Now here is the trap that almost everyone falls into. In the Western political mind, a leader who does not speak is a leader who is not in control. We are trained to think that power means visibility. The president gives the address. The prime minister stands at the podium. The strong leader shows his face, projects confidence, reassures the markets. So when we see a new supreme leader who says nothing and shows nothing, our instinct screams weakness. Our instinct says he's hiding because he's afraid. He's silent because he has nothing to say. He's invisible because he doesn't actually control the levers of power. And that instinct is the single most expensive mistake you can make when reading Iran. Because Iran does not run on the logic of Western visibility. It runs on a completely different operating system. Let me explain what that operating system is. In Shia political theology, the highest form of authority is not the loud authority. It's the hidden authority. This is not an accident. This is the theological core of the entire Islamic Republic. The central figure in 12er Shia belief is the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, who according to the doctrine did not die, but went into occultation, into hiddenness, more than 1,000 years ago. He is the true and legitimate ruler of the world, and he governs from concealment. He is real, he is present, he is in command, and he is unseen. That is not a bug in the belief system. That is the belief system. The most powerful authority in the universe, in the Shia worldview, is precisely the one you cannot see. So when a new supreme leader inherits power in the middle of a war and immediately withdraws from view, he is not signaling fear to his own people. He is stepping into the oldest and most powerful symbolic role their entire civilization understands. Hiddenness is not weakness in Iran. Hiddenness is legitimacy. Now let me connect that to something colder, something strategic, because I don't want you to think this is only about theology. There is a hard security logic here too, and it's just as important. Think about what just happened to the Iranian leadership. The Israelis and the Americans have spent the last phase of this war doing one thing above all others. They have been decapitating. They have targeted commanders, scientists, and by the reckoning of the regime itself, they reached all the way to the top and killed the supreme leader. When your enemy has just proven that they can find and kill anyone who becomes visible, what is the most rational thing a new leader can do? He disappears. He does not give the enemy a schedule. He does not give the enemy a stage with known coordinates. He does not become the next name on the target list the moment he takes the oath. The invisibility is not just theater, it is survival. It is a man who watched his father die and drew the only sane conclusion. Do not be where they can see you. And here is where it gets genuinely dangerous. Because those two things, the theological logic and the security logic, reinforce each other perfectly. In most countries, these two would pull in opposite directions. A leader who hides for safety would look weak and lose legitimacy. But in Iran, the leader who hides for safety gains legitimacy, because hiddenness is holy. So Mojtaba Khamenei gets to be both safe and sacred at the same time. He gets to be untouchable in the literal sense and untouchable in the symbolic sense. Do you see how much strength is hiding inside what the headlines are calling weakness? The West is looking at an empty podium and seeing a vacuum. Iran is looking at that same empty podium and seeing the outline of the hidden imam. Those are not small differences in interpretation. Those are two completely different realities, and only one of them is going to be proven correct by what happens next. So let's ask the real question. If the new supreme leader is silent, then who is talking? Because power still has to be exercised. Decisions still have to be made. Somebody is running the war. And this is where the invisibility becomes a strategy, not just a symbol. When the man at the top says nothing, everyone below him has to guess what he wants, and everyone below him has to act as if they already know. That does something very specific to a system. It pushes initiative downward. It empowers the hardliners. Think about it. If you are a commander in the Revolutionary Guard and the supreme leader has gone silent, you are not going to interpret that silence as an order to negotiate and make peace. You are going to interpret it as permission. Silence from the top in a wartime revolutionary state is not a break. It's an accelerator. Every faction that wants to escalate now gets to say, this is what the leader would want, and there's no leader visible to contradict them. This is exactly what I want you to hold on to, because it's the thing the mainstream coverage is completely missing. We keep hearing that mediators from Qatar and Pakistan are flying to Tehran to de-escalate. We keep hearing that Iran's president is on the phone with the Pakistani prime minister trying to save the nuclear talks. And that's all true. But notice who is doing that talking. The president, the mediators, the diplomats, the visible people. And notice who is silent. The one man whose word actually overrides all of them. In the structure of the Islamic Republic, the president does not decide the strategic direction of the state. The supreme leader does. So you have a situation where the people negotiating for peace do not have the final authority. And the person who has the final authority is saying nothing at all. That is not a country moving toward a deal. That is a country where the peace track is theater and the war track is running in the dark. Let me make this concrete, because I want you to see how it plays out on the ground. The Americans have declared the ceasefire over. They've launched new strikes after Iranian tanker activity in the Strait of Hormuz. The US Treasury has slammed the oil sanctions back into place, ripping up the waiver that briefly let Iranian oil flow. So Iran is now being told, at the exact same moment, two contradictory things. The diplomats are being told, come back to the table, finish the deal, and we'll ease the pressure. And the reality on the ground is telling them, we just tore up the last agreement, we just reimposed sanctions, and we're bombing you again. Now put yourself inside the mind of an Iranian hardliner reading those two signals. Which one do you believe? You believe the bombs. You believe the sanctions. You conclude that negotiation is a trap designed to keep you talking while your enemy reloads. And the one man who could overrule you, who could say no, we hold the line and we make the deal. That man is invisible. He is saying nothing. And his silence sounds a lot like a yes. Now I want to talk about the nuclear question, because it sits underneath all of this like a fault line. The IAEA inspectors are still locked out of the enrichment sites that got bombed. Nobody outside Iran actually knows the current state of the program. Was the enriched uranium destroyed, or was it moved before the strikes? Are the centrifuges gone, or are they buried and spinning somewhere we can't see? This is the single most important unknown in the entire crisis, and here's the terrifying part. It mirrors the leadership. Just like the new supreme leader, the nuclear program has gone invisible. And invisibility, in both cases, does the same work. It denies your enemy targets, it denies your enemy certainty, and it forces your enemy to negotiate against a shadow. You cannot bomb what you cannot find. You cannot pressure a man who will not appear. Iran has taken its two most valuable assets, its leader and its bomb program, and it has done the exact same thing with both of them. It has made them disappear. That is not chaos. That is a doctrine. That is a country that has studied exactly how it was hunted and has decided that the answer to being hunted is to become unseeable. So let me lay out what I think the invisible leader is actually telling the world, because that's the promise I made you at the start. Message number one is aimed at Washington and Tel Aviv. It says, you cannot kill your way to victory here, because we have removed the head from the target. You spent enormous effort reaching the top of our pyramid, and the moment you got there, the top of the pyramid dissolved into smoke. There is no single man to strike now, no single stage to bomb, no single voice whose death ends the war. You are fighting a system that has learned to operate without a face. Message number two is aimed at the Gulf monarchies, at Saudi Arabia, at the UAE, at Qatar. It says, do not assume we are collapsing. Do not bet on our funeral. Because a leader you cannot see is a leader who cannot be counted out. If you place your money on the theory that Iran is leaderless and finished, and that theory is wrong, you will have chosen the losing side of the most important wager in the region. And message number three is aimed inward, at Iran's own people and its own factions. It says, the guardianship continues, the line is unbroken, the revolution did not die in Mashhad. Rally, do not scatter. And here is the part that should genuinely worry anyone hoping this war wins down. An invisible leader is almost impossible to negotiate with. Think about why. Diplomacy requires a decider. It requires someone who can sit across a table or send a trusted envoy and say the words, "This is the deal. I accept it. It is binding." When the true authority is hidden, deliberately, structurally hidden, then no envoy can fully commit the state, because the envoy can always be overruled by the silence above him. The Americans could sign an agreement with Iran's president tomorrow, and it would be worth almost nothing, because the president is not the man who decides whether the missiles fly. So the invisibility that protects the leader and sanctifies the leader also does one more thing. It makes a real peace deal structurally impossible, because there is no visible hand to shake and no visible signature that closes the war. You cannot end a war with a ghost. Now let me steelman the other side for a moment, because I don't want you following the logic of power blindly. I want you following it honestly. There is a reading in which this really is weakness. It's possible Mojtaba Khamenei is hidden because his succession is contested, because the clerics in Qom have not fully blessed him, because the Revolutionary Guard commanders don't trust a leader who inherited power rather than earning it in the field. In that reading, the silence isn't strategy. It's a leader who cannot yet command the loyalty he needs to speak. And I'll be honest with you, that reading is not impossible. A hereditary handoff in a state that officially claims to choose its leader through a council of experts creates real friction. But here is why I still lean the other way. Even if the succession is contested, the smart play for a contested leader is still silence. Because the moment he speaks, and someone powerful ignores him, his weakness becomes public and permanent. Silence buys him time to consolidate. Silence lets him negotiate with his own factions before he ever has to negotiate with the enemy. So whether he is strong or whether he is weak, the invisibility is the correct move. And that is precisely why it tells us so little comfort. It's the strategy of a strong leader hiding to strike, and it's also the strategy of a weak leader hiding to survive. And from the outside, we cannot yet tell which one we are dealing with. That uncertainty is not our advantage. It's Iran's. So where does this actually go? Let me give you the shape of the next phase as I read it. In the near term, expect the visible track and the invisible track to run at the same time and contradict each other constantly. You will see diplomats fly to Tehran, and you will see strikes continue. You will see talk of reviving the deal, and you will see the Strait of Hormuz stay dangerous. Do not be confused by that contradiction. That contradiction is the system working exactly as designed, one hand extended for negotiation, while the other hand, the hidden one, keeps the war options fully loaded. In the medium term, watch for the first controlled appearance of the new supreme leader. When he finally does show himself, it will not be an accident, and it will not be routine. It will be chosen for maximum effect, at a shrine, in front of a mobilized crowd, timed to a moment when it converts silence into overwhelming presence. That is the moment the message changes, and when it comes, you'll know the consolidation phase is over and something new is beginning. And in the long term, the deepest signal here is about how this entire conflict is mutating. We are watching the birth of a state that has learned to fight without a visible center, that hides its leader like it hides its uranium, that has turned invisibility itself into a weapon system. That is much harder to defeat than a normal country, and much harder to make peace with, and both of those things point in the same grim direction. Here's what I want you to take away. When the whole world tells you a leader is weak because he is silent, ask yourself whose logic you are using to judge him. If you use the West's logic, silence looks like fear. If you use Iran's own logic, silence looks like the hidden imam, the untouchable authority, the man who commands precisely because he cannot be seen. The dangerous mistake is not misreading one man. The dangerous mistake is reading a foreign civilization through your own reflexes and then betting a war on it. The invisible supreme leader is not an absence. He is a signal. And the signal says the fight is not over. The deal is further away than the headlines pretend. And the people underneath that silence are being handed permission to escalate.